Every good gift. Now, it's interesting here. This word gift is a Greek word dosis. It's only used twice in the entire Greek New Testament. It's used here in James chapter 1, verse 17, and it's used in Philippians 4:15. It's used in describing the act of giving. Paul talked to the Philippian believers and said that you folks were the only ones concerning giving and receiving. Only you cared about me. Only you had a heart that was overflowing with a desire to give to help meet my needs. And this is what this word gift here means, that the goodness of God is a spirit and an act of giving. The good giving of God. The good givings of God might be one way we could translate this word. The idea here that there are things that God does just because He's good. We're told in the providence of God, He makes the sun to shine and the rain to fall on everybody, whether they're good or evil. Why? Because He just wants to be able to do good. It's part of His character, part of His nature. He wants to do that which is beneficial and helpful to others. And you know, if we sit down and we look at a society that has rejected God, we find that the good in that society is many times nothing more than evil that's mislabeled. And when we look at those societies and we see what we were talking about it this morning, every Christian has the right to proclaim the gospel, but if you do it in Saudi Arabia, you end up in jail. The good for the Christian is evil for the Muslim. And there have been Pakistanis who have lost their lives for preaching the gospel. And we find even in this country there are people who've gone to jail for handing out Bibles on the street corner. What are we saying? We're saying here that God in His desire to give, good, does that which is good for everyone. And it brings benefit for everyone. And He is the source and the reason that we have goodness in this world. Because man left to themselves, you have your father the devil, and the lust of your father he will do. The nations that have rejected God on every level, like Russia did during the 1917 revolution and for 70 years, like Nazi Germany did, claimed that it was good to take mentally handicapped people and kill them. They were doing good for the human race. Why? They were improving the race. They were going to have a superior race of people if the Germans would get rid of all those inferior people. But the problem is, pretty soon that definition expanded, as we are told. And the next thing that wasn't good was a Jew. And if you were a Jew, it was a good thing to get rid of you. And if it wasn't for the nations that had a Christian influence, Britain and the United States, having stood up and saying, wait a minute, this isn't good. I can remember one of the films that was put together for the soldiers to watch during World War II, called one of the Nazi leaders a humanist. Today, humanism is being touted as the way to be. But in 1940s in this country, we understood that humanists rejected God and set man up as king. And when man said something, if they said it was good, they would have to be good, and you'd have to follow it. So therefore, you have to put Jewish people in ovens. Folks, we do not grasp sometimes, and we do not find in our hearts a gratitude for the recognition that the goodness that we have in this reality has come from God's communication and God's providential spread of the gospel of Jesus Christ and the righteousness of God found in the Bible. Or as our founders called it, the laws of nature and nature's God. That what we have today around us that is truly good has its source in its conception, in its practice, in the providential rulership of God over the affairs of men, and of the willingness of man to cooperate with God. So that when God says every good gift, cometh down from above. Every perfect gift, he goes on to even further. The word perfect here is the Greek word teleos. It means that which wants nothing necessary to its completeness. That which brings about a consummate human integrity and virtue. You know, when people honestly understand what good and evil is, and then they look at the Bible, and they look at the standard that God has held out for his people, and they truly grasp and understand what is said, there is no higher moral standard of right and wrong than to be found in the laws of Almighty God and in the teachings of Jesus Christ. That's the highest good, the highest virtue. And yet today we are being told that if we would see these virtues practiced, that we would somehow be persecuting people. Folks, the only people that are going to feel persecuted when righteousness rules are evil. It is better to have the wicked groan because the righteous bear rule than it is to have the righteous groan and the wicked bear rule. And the scriptures warn that when the wicked bear rule, the righteous groan. They mourn. And folks, what God is saying here through his word is, look, everything that is good, everything that fulfills purposes that which I have created for, is a perfect gift from me. And it's interesting. James uses a different word to describe gift here. This word is the Greek word dorima. It means a bounty or a benefaction. Something that is above and beyond what is quote-unquote expected. It's something that far surpasses and has far much more good effect. You know, most Christians understand that what God has given to them, they don't really deserve. When we get the attitude that we are deserved or owed something, that's when we lose sight of gratitude for God. Because all God really owes to sinful mankind is his wrath and his justice and his judgment and his punishment for their sin. That's what he is obligated to give them. But God in his goodness gives them, well, look at verse 18 here, what James says. Of his own will begat he us with the word of truth, that we should be kind of a first fruit of his creatures. That word, first fruits, is an interesting word. God not only saves the Christian, God not only takes care of his need before the justice bar of God, but God begins to work something with this Christian. In fact, the definition for this word has the idea that it's used to describe persons who are consecrated to God, meaning who are dedicated to giving men a right opinion of him. And because of that, right here in the definition for first fruit, it says persons superior in excellence to others of the same class. Dr. Bob Sr. said, all things being equal, a Christian should always do a better job than an unsaved person. Why? Because the Christian is supposed to do all he does for the glory of God. The Christian is supposed to do all he does heartily as unto the Lord. That the superior goodness of God is supposed to shine through the Christian. Should make him an example of that bountiful goodness of God, where he goes beyond what is expected and does more than that which is expected. And folks, if we really think about this, this is what God has done for us. God does not only have justice that punishes evil. God goes further and gives goodness that bountifully gives more than expected to those who obtain it. Those who live it out. And as I looked at this passage and as I recognized what we are seeing here being taught, I came up with three things that I would say that we as Christians should be grateful for. Number one, I think we should be grateful for the perfection of God. Do we value a perfect God?